Thank you. Like it was just said, I'm the developer advocate for the Zephyr project, which means that I don't wear a suit, basically. I want to use the excuse of Zephyr RTOS, just like the new version of the Zephyr was released a couple days ago, so it's kind of like an excuse to dive a bit deeper into some of the, like, what is Zephyr all about? And so from a technology standpoint, from an ecosystem standpoint as well, community, like I want to make sure that I give an overview of that, how Zephyr sort of like position itself in the RTOS and open source RTOS landscape. And since we are here to talk about collaboration opportunities, some of the things we've been doing in Zephyr pretty much since day one is look at important topics in the context of IoT and embedded security, safety. The S in IoT stands for security, right? And it often comes as an afterthought. Want to share a bit about how we approach it and do it in Zephyr, and and I want to conclude with some thoughts on how we can do even more. And actually, Wayne already gave a few hints about that. This might be the most important slide of the presentation, trying to define what Zephyr is. Zephyr RTOS, so you might think it's a real-time operating system, a little OS, like you said. I really like the term, Wayne. It's actually more than that. Like, yes, it's a real-time OS, as in a scheduler and like the low-level infrastructure you need to run and write software on small constrained microcontrollers. But just like OpenEuler, I guess, Zephyr is also a distro. Like it's really an entire ecosystem of the low-level kernel, but some like libraries that sit on top of it to actually allow customers and developers to build real and useful applications, right? Like it's really a complete application framework with quite a big focus on all things connectivity. We're talking about IoT, so Bluetooth and TCP/IP and like low power wireless protocols. And then a developer environment as well, like providing guidance and providing tools to help developers like manage their tool chains and do continuous integration testing. It's really the complete story, right? And which is pretty unique actually in the real-time operating system landscape. It's way more than just code, if you will. And going a bit further, and we've been talking about open source foundation quite a bit already. This afternoon, Zephyr is hosted, and it's a Linux Foundation project, which means we also we take it at heart to really make Zephyr a level playing field and make sure that there is a clear governance for all companies and individuals to collaborate around Zephyr. So we have, just like OpenEuler, there is a technical steering committee and committees looking at safety, security, etc. And for the past 8 years, basically, we've been doing this under the Linux Foundation umbrella, and there's now a pretty vast ecosystem of companies building actual products, right? And I really want to show this slide because there's things there that you would not necessarily expect. Like IoT, you think about maybe wearables and consumer devices. Yep, there's lots of such devices that are being shipped out there, but it's also medical devices like hearing aids, for example, or laptops like the Chrome OS, Chromebooks, or the framework laptops. Basically, the embedded firmware, the embedded controller is based on Zephyr. Big industrial machines, industrial gateways, like wind turbines, those are all running Zephyr, basically. And one reason is because we, just like it was mentioned with OpenEuler, there's basically virtually any architecture out there in terms of processors is supported in Zephyr, be it ARM or Intel, but also RISC-V. The Lung Arc, I would really like to see supported in Zephyr, and I don't see why not. So I think that will actually open a lot of opportunities. And for developers, that means that basically any developer board, any device they have that they want to start building an actual application on top of, it's likely already supported in Zephyr, right? We support literally 600 plus boards out of the box. And same for drivers. You want to, when you build an embedded solution, you want to interface with temperature sensors and with SD cards for storing files and whatnot, this is likely, again, already supported in Zephyr. So those are some of our member companies. Basically, all the silicon vendors out there are either platinum or silver members of the Zephyr project. ST Micro, Renesas, you might have seen the news yesterday. They just joined as silver members. Companies that provide services, tooling, end users as well, like the likes of Baumer or Audicon. Like they actually build products on top of Zephyr, and they want to support the community. Like I said, Zephyr 3.6 just released an excuse to dive a bit deeper into some of the technology that might be relevant. Not all the bullet points might have like a direct relationship with what OpenEuler does, but I believe the fact that Zephyr now supports and integrates with trusted firmware, TFM 2.0 could be quite interesting for the community. One thing that I want to cover more in the next slides is going to be the stuff that we do around software supply chain management and basically having SBOM generation baked right into Zephyr. Anyone building a solution on top of Zephyr, they can, with just one click, one line, they can get the full SBOM, like capturing the full manifest of what are all the dependencies that they are pulling into their product, so that 6 months, 2 years down the road, should there be a CVE, a vulnerability for a particular piece of code that they didn't even know they were depending on, then they have the ability to go and fix it and like roll out updates if needed. Yeah, and one thing that we do, and that we'll also elaborate a bit more, is having been around for many years, one thing that we will be doing this year for the 3rd time, just like many other Linux distributions out there, is release a new long-term support version of Zephyr. Like usually Zephyr would be released 3 to 4 times a year, like every 4 months, so 3 times. But every other year, we coin a new long-term support release so that we actually commit to support this particular version for at least 2 years for people building products to be confident that they will get their security patches applied, etc. A few words about how Zephyr positions itself in the RTOS landscape. Take those metrics with a grain of salt. They show Zephyr in a really favorable position. Those are some numbers that I pulled. You might want to do your own due diligence there, but looking at the number of contributors, it's actually pretty impressive. I would love to see actually the same numbers for OpenEuler to get a sense of like how the community engages. But for Zephyr, basically, you look at like the past 30 days in Zephyrland, you will find over 250 different individuals who actually contributed code. And this goes on and on, right? Like this has been growing up and going up for the past many years. And if you look at other open source real-time operating systems out there, the community might not be as active or as large, I should say. Similarly, developers seem to really like Zephyr, and it's really nice to see how many people are clicking on GitHub and giving Zephyr a star. Again, like, I mean, all the RTOSs out there seem to have like a decent share and engagement from the community, but for Zephyr, it's really a hockey stick, which is always, yeah, nice to see, I guess. Similarly, just to give some numbers, take them as whatever you want, but activity on GitHub, like how many people do collaborate and use Zephyr on a day-to-day basis? Well, it's literally tens of thousands of visitors, unique visitors, every couple of weeks. Like on a given particular day, that's like 1,300 people who engaged on the GitHub repository. This is huge. I should actually pull the Linux kernel numbers to put them next to that, but it's actually quite all right. Security and safety, sharing a bit about how we approach this. Again, the project has been around for, at least in open source, for 8 years, almost to the day. And security-wise, we've been working on basically structuring and like having all the processes in place so that we do it right, hopefully. So one thing that we do is like at the code level, structuring our open source repositories so that the main development happens like basically in the main branch, and that's where most of the release come out of. And the code that goes into this branch is like all the developers, they need to abide by our developer certificate of origin. And essentially, there are two other branches, if you will, one dedicated to the long-term support version, which might not include all the bleeding edge stuff, but that's kind of intentional. It's really meant to be stable, and all the important security fixes would be backported to this branch. And then there's an other branch, which is even more stable, if you will, and which we call also auditable. Zephyr is a pretty big ecosystem, pretty rich in terms of features. When it comes to safety certification, there's actually only a small subset of the kernel and the essential libraries that we are looking at certifying. And so this lives in a branch where the development is more under control, if you will, and this is where certification work happens. Security-wise, and again, would love to discuss either during the panel or later offline how we can share some best practices there, but it's all about best practices, basically. So it starts by actually writing down how we approach security, like what is our vision regarding to how development should happen, how should code be reviewed when new code gets in, when new actual like subsystems and new pieces of functionality, how do they get reviewed at an architectural level, at a code level. Supply chain management, like having the infrastructure in place, which I think is quite unique for an open source RTOS. If you're building on top of Zephyr, you are going to likely pull lots of dependencies, like you're going to pull the Zephyr kernel, potentially some third-party libraries, maybe embed TLS if you're doing you're doing security and things like that. Zephyr has like built-in tooling for generating an SBOM, and in the context of LTS 3 coming up later this year, we will be doing even more work in terms of being compatible with the new version of SPDX version 3, making it easier for people to capture dependencies towards third-party libraries like embed TLS, like I said, really in the form of actual packages, so that it's even easier to track when someone might be impacted by a vulnerability. So we'd love to see some collaboration there with the Open Euro community. We are our own CVE numbering authority, so whenever a new vulnerability is reported against Zephyr, we sort of evaluate and like we evaluate the criticality, and we are our own CVE authority in that way. Best practices, again, like one thing that we've been doing for the past many years actually is trying to follow some of the best practices recommended by the by OpenSSF. So it's usually like things like documenting where people can find our security manual, like where people can find the code, is there a developer certificate of origin, etc., etc. I highly recommend Open Euro does something similar if this is not already the case. This gives everyone better visibility with regards to sort of the level of maturity of the project. Product makers, we encourage anyone building a product on top of Zephyr to register themselves to our vulnerability alert registry. There's many ways, I mean, many open source projects out there, they are doing usually the right thing when it comes to dealing with security vulnerabilities. Like someone would disclose the vulnerability, not in public, hopefully, and the vulnerability will be addressed, and eventually it makes it into the open source repository, and the vulnerability is fixed. When you build a product, you kind of would like to be involved in the process and know in advance if there is some vulnerability being discussed and being fixed. You don't want to wait until it's effectively rolled out to patch your product. So we give product makers a way to essentially be notified when new vulnerabilities come in. So again, best practices, right? Like it's documenting what you're doing. We actually do lots of code, static code analysis to identify potential security vulnerabilities ahead of time. Usually ahead of the release, there is a lot of those checks that are being run and lots of the violations being fixed, as bomb generation I mentioned. When it comes to safety, we have, just like there is a security committee, a security architect, same for safety. The community is essentially working on like defining what is the subset of Zephyr that's going to be safety certification ready. So a subset of the kernel, which is probably really small on the slides, but I think the slides will be circulated. But focusing initially on ARM and x86 and providing all the working on all the documentation and all the evidence that's needed to make Zephyr certified. With the time I have left, and we can continue the discussion during the panel, certainly. I think like some of the things that Wayne mentioned, I would really like to keep discussing after today's workshop, the global footprint that Zephyr has. Like it's only like it's an international project. Users, maintainers, contributors of Zephyr, they're really working all around the world. Maybe not as much in China, or like we could do more. And like having you guys participate to our events, etc. It's really, really valuable. There's a lot of things that we do in terms of public relationship, if you will, that it would be great to do more of. Like we run Zephyr Tech Talks and like we do webinars. I would love to work on that, right? To have better cross-pollination and work also within that exercise. We've done that exercise in the past, also like create content, like Zephyr content that's actually in Chinese. Like we've been doing that a few months back. Whenever a new Zephyr release is being made, like work on getting really good material out there. When it comes to security, you mentioned the mixed criticality aspect. There are things in Zephyr that can potentially help, like when it comes to software supply chain management, capturing the full SBOM of what it is that you're going to deploy in this super heterogeneous architecture. I think would be great to collaborate on. And with regards to some of the technology, and I realize I'm going through the bullet points backwards. Technology-wise, I mean, there's a lot of things that Wayne knows very well about, but I encourage everyone to check out as well. That might make a lot of sense to demonstrate. To talk about Zephyr 3.6 specifically, we have now a new way to deploy dynamically code in running like embedded platforms. We call these LLX, linkable loadable extensions. Very technical, but very, I think, applicable to the context of mixed criticality and also in the context of security. So that might be another opportunity to collaborate. And with that, I think that's all I had for today. A few pointers for folks to learn more about Zephyr, although it's pretty easy to find it online. Our community, for what it's worth, is really active on Discord, which again might or might not be the best way to collaborate at an international level. So I would love also to have that discussion on how to have better communication channels and platforms to collaborate with the Open Euler project. Thank you.